Edition with executive producer Brenden Martin in
Good
the
morning.
studio down in Ocala. How you doing, man? You're
Studio
not as cold
B.
as we are.
It's starting to warm up today. I'm in Studio B. Buddy and I just hot swapped. He was in here doing Shane Matthews' show, and then he texted me, "Okay, the studio's free." And then I came running in and I put in my laptop. So that's how we do Studio B for Brenden and Buddy. So that's how we.
That studio for the double B's of the Martins,
Double
man.
B.
Hey, I like what you did, man. I love this in the mornings, sending me a list of topics that are trending. And we're going to bring Chris Lee in here in just a minute. Start off with from the Southeastern 14, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Right after that, and Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider. There is a lot to talk about. Again, a lot of stories, but I want to say, I think, starting off, losing Toby Keith, man, he passed away last night. I know he wasn't but 62. And I had just heard that he had cancer. I believe it was stomach cancer.
Yeah.
One of the greatest Patriot singer-songwriters ever. And,
good.
he'll still be with us forever. But, man, what a great one. And I know there's copyright laws and YouTube and all, but I sure wish we could put a boot up their ass. I love that guy. We'll be right back. Get ready. Get pen and paper handy. It's going to be a fun one.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Chris Lee, Southeastern 14 up in Nashville, joins us right now. Rob Browne here in Memphis, and Brenden Martin in Ocala in the studios, our executive producer. And Chris, 5 stories, and I'm going to throw them at you, and I know you've got a lot you want to cover, but Brenden sent this to me this morning. 5 trending stories in the SEC news footprint. Well, Big Ten and SEC forming the Joint Advisory Group. We'll talk about that. New SEC baseball tournament format for 2025. North Carolina defeats Duke in basketball. Both of them in the top 10. What about the rest of the ACC? Mississippi State getting crushed. Where are they going? Mitch Davis talked about it yesterday. Clemson Tigers, well, they're recruiting well. That affects the SEC. And the loss, again, of Toby Keith, who his Oklahoma Sooners now coming into the SEC. What a Patriot. That guy did a lot, and he was true grit. But, Chris, thanks for taking time to join us, and I'll let you get started in response to any or all of those stories.
Didn't know about Toby Keith till I got on here. I'm not a big country music guy, but you had to know who he was and have heard his songs, and you hate to hear that. I'll go a little different direction. I will take a few of the things that you talked about with basketball and just weave it into the general discussion of parity. I think there's a lot more of it throughout college basketball. I'm working on a bracketology thing that we'll probably do Wednesday, and I'm looking at the top 1 and 2 seed lines, and it seems to me like a lot of these teams that are on the 2 line or, I don't know, 18 and 5-ish, 17 and 6-ish. And it seems like in the past, I'd have to go back and look at it. That's more of a spot where a team is maybe 18 and 4, 19 and 3. Just seems like there's more losses to go around. You saw Kansas, which is in the running for a 1 seed, get handed one last night by Kansas State, which I don't think would be in the tournament today if the field were picked. You talk about Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State's big thing right now is it's just running into a brick wall of a schedule that is unyielding in this league. I think you've got about 11 teams in the SEC that on any given night in the right venue can win. Like, I don't think LSU, I would say, is 11 of those 11. I don't think LSU is going to go into Alabama right now and win, or Tennessee. But, like, if that game is in Baton Rouge, then maybe it goes another way. Point being that I just think there's a lot of parity in college basketball. You've seen it in football. And although the way the product is made, and we're seeing all this with football, with the coalitions, with the SEC, the Big Ten, the Tennessee News, all the other, the stuff that came out of Dartmouth yesterday with unions. I mean, the pace of change and where this is going is dizzying. But what it's made for in the meantime is a product that I think might have made Pete Rozelle proud in some ways with all the parody.
Well, parody. Is it parody, or is it that other schools in the conference have made a commitment to basketball where in the past they really hadn't? And that's the next question I'll throw at you. You're in Nashville, and you are really aware of your surroundings, meaning to the north, Kentucky, to the east, Tennessee, and right there, Vanderbilt. The one that just frustrates me, I don't know what it is. I guess I'm sentimental, but I want to see Vanderbilt be good because I got a lot of family members that went there, and it's a founding member of the conference. And I know so many good attorneys and doctors that went to school there, and it's got to frustrate you. But I want to ask you about Kentucky. Is their lack of success now due to Calipari just has lost interest? He's got so much money, he's just not motivated, or that everybody else in the league is raising their commitment and the bar and they're pushing harder, and Kentucky's not responding?
Well, I think you've got 13 teams in the league that are as bought into winning in basketball as they've ever been, and one that seems indifferent to it. And I think what you're seeing is a bunch of stuff. It's the greater parity narrative. It's the NIL. It's the roster churn, where I don't think you're going to. It's hard for a team to run off and hide the way Kentucky used to be able to do it back in its gloriest of glory days. I think that's number one. I think number two, the way that John Calipari built his program, up until 5 years ago, whenever the portal window opened wide and, add NIL, it was different. He could just go out and he'd land 4 of the top 10 players in the country. Nobody could compete with that. You'd have some transfers, but not a lot. And I think the model that he built his program on is blown up. Now, look, Kentucky does have some experienced transfers. Trey Mitchell from West Virginia, Antonio Reeves from Illinois State have played a ton of basketball over their careers, and they're a big part of what they do. But most of the rest of that team is pretty young, and I don't know. Things go a little bit wrong here and there. You got a guy like Justin Edwards who's not the player they thought they would be. DJ Wagner's been hurt. It just seems to me like there's a lot less margin for error in the way he does things than there used to be. Combine that with the SEC getting more competitive, I think that explains a lot of what you see.
How many first-rounders or one-and-dones does this Kentucky team look like they have to you compared to what they've had? I think it's 2015's their last Final Four, 2012 their last national championship.
Yeah, let me pull up the roster so I don't forget somebody. And also couch this with the fact that I'm not an NBA guy. I don't follow it a lot. But, I mean, Rob Dillingham would be, DJ Wagner would be, Reed Shepherd would be, Justin Edwards, if he hasn't killed his draft stock with this season, you would think so. Aaron Bradshaw was a McDonald's All-American level talent. I would think he would at least be draftable based on potential and size. I don't know where Reeves and Mitchell rank as pro prospects, but they're really good college players. Look, it's not a lack of talent.
Yeah.
No, they may not have a John Wall or a DeMarcus Cousins or name any one of the surefire NBA All-Stars that they've had in the past. Maybe that's where it's a little different too.
Yeah. Well, they just look to me. I mean, Tennessee goes up there and gets a win. Florida got a win last week at Rupp Arena, and John Calipari's guaranteed so much money. I just think it's the same thing happened with Jimbo. He's the basketball equivalent of Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. It's just what he is.
I thought it before you said it.
Yeah. And you just can't give people that much money. You want them to be hungry. And there's always, in the NFL, players are cut left and right for lack of performance. I mean, I remember it used to be Monday morning newspaper. There'd be a list of all the players cut, and it might be the guy that missed the field goal, at the end of the game, but it's pretty ruthless. On along the line, what other stuff? This big story about the SEC and the Big Ten joining forces, an advisory group. Is this just for show, or because I mean, I work in banking and finance and all. You have meetings about the meeting. There's just a lot of people who have to justify their existence by having meetings, and they don't do anything. The best meetings I ever saw, in the Ranger Battalion as a reporter, I would see them. They take those big spools that cable goes on to put phone lines in, and they would stand one up, and there'd be 6 people around. You might have the battalion commander, a colonel, and then the captains, the lieutenants, and then the NCOs who really run the military. And the meeting would take less than 10 minutes. And I mean, that was great versus a big, nice, comfortable room with food and drinks and couches and chairs, 2 or 3 hours of a bunch of hot air and nothing gets done. That's what I hope's not happening, because if we don't do something quickly, we aren't going to recognize college athletics.
Well, look, the NCAA, we have seen the folly of waiting for direction and leadership and vision and common sense. But the SEC is run by a commissioner who I don't think operates that way.
Yeah.
The Big Ten is taking a pragmatic approach to this. Now, I don't like what's happened with the realignments and everything, and the Pac-12, half of it getting absorbed into other places and all that. But we can gripe about how much we don't like it, or we can face the reality that things are changing, that football controls everything, that the rules in football are different than they are in other things. And I don't know whether this committee does something or not. Right now, it's kind of neither here nor there, because something's going to happen at some point where common sense is going to reign. I think there's too much money. I think we've got this at the backdrop of the NCAA going after Tennessee, going after Florida State, and then what happened at Dartmouth yesterday. It's just an interesting world right now, and it's all moving so fast, and there are so few guardrails, and so few people have an idea where this is going to go that it's almost dizzying.
Don't you guys? I was thinking about this morning. Isn't it an interesting linchpin in this whole thing? Is like, what's Notre Dame going to do, right?
Yeah.
Like where are they going to go? Because they're non-rev sports. They're down in the ACC, right? And then, you got football, which sits in a whole different, genre, as we know. And they're happy with their contract, and they're happy with where they are. But, man, what happens to the Domers here, and where they, I think that'll be sort of an interesting, as they sit back and wait and see how things happen. And then, obviously, what happens to the ACC, right? Do they implode?
Yeah.
Do they end? I think these are what I just wanted to bring that up to you, Chris, and get your thoughts on that.
I don't know what happens, but the big football brands, there's too much money to be made. If there's an alliance that's formed that says, hey, we're going to take the top 32 football programs in America, just throwing that out there to make it like I don't see any way that Notre Dame is left out, because there's too much money to be had with Notre Dame being in it. I think it's the huge brands like that that'll be okay. I don't know what it looks like, but I cannot imagine Notre Dame being
well, they kind of always controlled their own destiny, right?
Right.
We're going to do this, screw everybody else, because we've got all the largest fan base, or one of the largest fan bases, and they've always had that contract, in their back pocket for TV. I just always thought it would be interesting. That was just brought up on a show yesterday, and they were talking about it, and then obviously what happens with the ACC, like what's going to go down. Where's Florida State going? Because talking about Florida State, I mean that's a massive brand, especially now, monster brand. And so, we talk about this conversations that, what's going to happen in these meetings, but they can decide all they want. There's a lot of teams that aren't in that room.
Yeah.
Well, I think Notre Dame is already where everybody else is going to go. And I think, Jackie Sherrill was right 32 years ago. You're going to have 65 teams. You'll probably have 4 16-team super leagues, or 2 32s, or I don't know, 4 16s. And Notre Dame will go with them. But they're already where the future is. You're going to have football on a separate island, and then all the non-revenue sports, or some of them make money, but Olympics, whatever they want to call it, but all the other sports. Because the NCAA runs 91 national championships for men's and women's sports. Basketball is their billion-dollar moneymaker that finances about everything else. The second most profitable national championship is the Men's College World Series. Notice I don't say men's softball. I mean, people always say that. I'm like, there's no beer gut league softball for in the NCAA. But college football, people forget, it's not governed by the NCAA, the national championship. So I think we're going to have football will be over here, and then you'll have a lot more examples of like what Notre Dame does right now all over the country. I think you'll see the Big Ten, those Pac-12 schools. It ain't going to take long for them to say uncle about that cross-country travel. And I mean, the Big Ten schools as well. Rutgers to UCLA for the Tuesday night volleyball game. I mean, wait till these kids grade. You know, they are. I just remembered they are in school to get an education. And that's going to be tough, those 5-hour flights. And then wait till you get snowed in on the East Coast, Chris. That's a problem. But I think Notre Dame is already where the rest of the Big 65 are going to go. And then that other group of 68 D1 schools, they'll have a national championship that'll be just as important to them. And maybe they'll end up having a deal where they play each other after they play each other.
Yeah, it's impossible to predict. I do think. I mean, I wish you could make some kind of special exemption for football.
Yeah,
and I even down to the scholarships. I think that would, with the Title IX, that just the whole thing. Like, there's so many common sense solutions out there, with I don't know, revenue sharing or things that you would apply to any other business, and this is a business, but because of Title IX. The NCAA's hands are tied a little bit. That's where I do feel sorry for it a bit with having to fund scholarships to things that aren't money makers. It's just this big, weird conglomeration of things. And at every turn, it's hard to work around this or that.
Well, Brenden, you're making a good point about this. And that is what's going to happen to the ACC, what's going to happen to the Big 12, the Pac-2. I mean, and then in basketball, the Big East has a seat at the table. I mean, they're not just waiting for, leftovers. They've got the defending national champion, and they might have it again this year.
Well, I think Chris makes a great point. It's about what sport, right? Football's a different animal. Basketball's a different animal depending on the school and where you are, right? And I think that has everything to do with the interest of the school and what conference that they're in, right? So, I don't mean to take words out of your mouth, Chris, but I agree with what you said there about footballs. It's a whole, especially down south. I mean, we all know how different that is.
Yeah.
Well, and you brought up the Big East, Rob. I think one of the first signs of unintended consequences or whatever bucket you want to put this in was when the real Big East dissolved. What's it been now? A dozen years ago?
Yeah.
When Syracuse left for the ACC, when, you had the Big East tournament in basketball in the 80s, 90s, early parts. It used to be as good a sporting event as you could watch outside of maybe the NCAA tournament. And a wrecking ball got taken to that whole thing because football was the driver of all these things. And I think that, again, back to football being a special animal, it just dictates so much. And the other things, like you talked about, the cross-country travel, of UCLA going to Rutgers for women's volleyball or whatever, just all the dominoes that have fallen ever since make no sense outside of the concept of football. And, again, it just screams that we need some sort of exemption or special rules or something.
I mean, it's why I think the NCAA is going to just collapse. I mean, they do the officials. We have Steve Shaw on the show from time to time, the head of NCAA officials, and he still lives in Birmingham, but coordinates it all over the country. You're going to have certain things that are centralized. I mean, you can't have rules in one conference different from rules in another. Although I think the pitch clock or the pitch count in baseball is different because people, in the SEC versus other leagues. But and I like this comment from Kelly Leak, Bad News Bears. What women's sports are profitable for the NCAA? Well, and I mean, I have 2 girls, 2 boys. So, this isn't anything about attacking women's sports, but the terms of endearment in the business world follow the money trail, Chris. You know that.
Yeah. All these people that want, and I'm not trying to bash people, but all these people that want, well, we need to make sure we got equal for this and we got equal for that. And all the bureaucrats that run those things, I kind of want to say to them at times, okay, the janitor that cleans your office at night, how much do they make? If we're gonna go there, let's just go all out. Let's equalize everything, and let's see how you like it. Well, of course, the pushback will be, well, no, wait a minute, I've got skills and things like that that've got a market value, and that would fall apart quickly if you turn the rules on those people, and made them apply to them too. It's all about economic value and common sense, and that's what needs to be driving decisions. But we are stuck in a place where the driving force is a conglomeration of people who are ideologues at heart until it applies to them. And that's where we seem to be stuck with all this.
Well, the driving force, we talk about it's about money. But I tell you what I'm getting turned off by is these college athletes that, for my school, you pick the school, wherever you went, it still means a hell of a lot to me that I graduated from Auburn, and it always will. And Brenden, where he graduated from, where you graduated from, or where you went to school, maybe you didn't finish. It doesn't matter. It's your blood.
Went to a lot of schools, Rob. Went to a lot of schools.
I mean, it took me 6 years. I was redshirted twice.
I went to 3 or 4 of those schools. I was very, very active in school, not in class, just in school.
Well, Brenden, who was it yesterday, said the college presidents, they just went to, and said it yesterday, college presidents just went to college longer than anybody else. Now, there's some really good ones that we do know, but some of them I'm like, what are you doing? But Chris, I think that what we're seeing, I want to see kids that love their school. And I think, in my opinion, I think Nick Saban probably had enough of those discussions about gimme, NIL, and I think he just said, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm not gonna kiss these guys' butts and just that's just what it's becoming now. It's not, and I'm wondering this, Chris. How many of these kids really love these schools versus how many of them are just going because they got money? I mean, I'm beginning to think it's almost a false. It's a Trojan horse.
It is. I mean, if you grew up in and around college football, and here's another place where it went wrong. Every Friday, what did we do? Thanksgiving weekend, we sat down and watched Oklahoma, Nebraska. Didn't matter if you're an SEC fan, didn't matter if you're whatever. And those things had meaning, they had history, they had tradition. All that has gone out the window now. It's a free-for-all, and I think some elements of it are good. We have freedom of choice in all other areas of life, or most of them. And so we have, for a long time, created this world where there wasn't freedom of this or that. And so the pendulum always swings too far to the other side when changes are made. That's in the midst of what we're in. You see the NCAA fighting back to swing the pendulum back to a place that seems untenable and unfair to ward off what kids can or can't make based on the use of their skills that make hundreds of millions of dollars for other people. And that's just where we are. And until you have a vision and a leadership and a plan, which there clearly isn't one, we're going to continue to have this show.
This is just more about Vanderbilt. Do you watch SEC Shorts, the comedy on YouTube?
Yeah.
Have you seen the recent one? They did where they all, each team's represented by the guy. He goes in to meet with the teacher and they give him the update on how they did for the year. And then they bring in the Vanderbilt person.
Yeah.
And he walks in and he's like just sitting there. He's like, "Can I just have my revenue share, please? Just have my money.
Yeah.
I just want my money." Everyone else is like, you got most improved this year. And you did this really funny. And then Vanny guy comes, "Just give me my cut." They hand him over a bag of cash and they walk out. How much is that? I mean, I don't think that's obviously true, but it does kind of feel like that sometimes at Vanderbilt.
I think it's more true than I thought it was. a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we could do a whole 2 hours on that. I think this explains a lot. I was talking to somebody because if you want to go back to 2018 when David Williams stepped down / was forced out, whatever, and if you want to go back to 20 years when you remember that whole thing about the school eliminated the athletic department, that's really the start a lot of Vandy's stuff. They presented it at the time that, hey, this is a great thing for athletics because now we don't have to run a budget surplus and all these things. And we couldn't do it without doing that. Well, you can do a lot of stuff if you put your mind to it, but it was framed as this is good for athletics. What it was really was the start of a time in which, and I was rewinding this because 5 years ago, Vanderbilt, when it was searching for an athletic director, it had settled on Boo Corrigan from Army. And he was practically packing his bags to come, all but hired. Something happened at the last minute and it fell apart, and it was Vanderbilt pulling the plug. And I've never heard anything bad said about Boo Corrigan. I think Vanderbilt just decided it wasn't the image that it wanted. So then it went and grabbed a guy with a law degree who wasn't even seeking the job because it fit the image the school wanted. And again, the image, when I was asking somebody about this, and I'm sorry for going around the world.
No, you're fine.
Point, but at Vanderbilt, everything's always complicated. I was asking somebody maybe a month ago because whatever happened with Boo Corrigan, it never really came out. I heard theories, but I never got an explanation. And this guy knows it really well. And he just laughed at me. He said, they were never going to hire an athletic director. I said, I think, I know what you mean by that, but what? He's like, they're not going to hire an athletic director. They want a vice chancellor over athletics. And when you look at it through that lens, which is a very Vanderbilt specific thing, they want their vice chancellor to look and act like the one who's the vice chancellor over this or that or any. They got like 30 of them. I'm told. I've never fact checked that, but
like bank vice presidents.
Well, yes, and at every other school,
it's like offensive coordinators at Florida.
Yeah, right. This is a good way to explain it. This was explained to me this way too. Imagine every school is an umbrella, and all your academic stuff falls under that umbrella at every other school. And then you got athletics, which is this box outside. If you're going to serve on a board of trust or something like that, one of the first questions is, how much crimson do you bleed when we cut you open or whatever? And how familiar, how supportive are you going to be of our football program? And they're not going to put somebody on their board of trust that just going to, hey, let's take a hatchet to Bryant-Denny Stadium or whatever. And de-emphasize the importance of football. Vanderbilt, it all runs the opposite way. They took the box that's athletics, they put it under the umbrella that is everything else, and now the vice chancellor of athletics is just like a vice chancellor of, like I said, whatever else. And the implications kind of flowed from that. They got a bunch of stuff they want vice chancellors to do. It's how you look, how you represent the school. Do you embarrass the school? Do you not embarrass the school? Do you talk like this? Do you support our mission? Everything flows from the mission of that school and whatever they think is politically important at the time. So then winning gets put on a checklist. Now, at some point, everybody's got their breaking point. If Jerry Stackhouse goes out and loses 50 games in a row, he probably gets fired as the basketball coach because of the revenue and the embarrassment and whatever. But whatever thing that you think governs athletics at Vanderbilt, it's not what it is if you compare it to everywhere else. And it's just winning is just another thing on the list over there of what you're supposed to do overseeing athletics. And I think until that changes, until the school, unless it ever is able to pull athletics back out from the umbrella of school. And by the way, the school's communication department is over its media relations. So you won't see that anywhere else. And there's a million things like that. But the point is, it's mindset from the top down. It's university controls. We're going to run athletics like we run everything else. And that just doesn't work, and it's not working.
Well, yeah, I've always felt like that, Vanderbilt was it was like kind of a secret win-win. I think the SEC sort of liked having what, quote unquote, the smart kids, right? It was like you had, it wasn't just this one thing. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, Vanderbilt and they're, the Ivy League of the South, or, and they do all this stuff. I just always felt like it gave the SEC, liked it as a whole. It's like gave it a little cred, right? Little education cred.
And then there's more to it than that. There's just stuff that you don't think of. It is all those things, but as somebody put it to me, there's not this movement to kick Vanderbilt out of the league because Nashville's the most fun road trip in the league. Fans love going there. It's a win. And here's something I didn't think of. A lot of times presidents will, if LSU's coming to Nashville or Kentucky or whoever, that's a road trip a lot of the big boosters will make, and presidents will make a lot of their big asks in Nashville because it's fun. Everybody's having a good time. Presumably the drinks are flowing and whatever else gets people in the mood to write big checks. And I don't think Vanderbilt is ever going to get kicked out of the SEC. Now, this big domino that is college football, it's controlling everything else, might be the thing that gets them out of big-time football. But there are not people standing in line to kick Vanderbilt out of the league for all those reasons.
No, I don't think so. I mean,
I don't think so either.
And everybody, the schools in the Southeastern Conference everybody's constantly trying to raise the academic bar. I mean, but Vanderbilt I think if you have a league, and I said this last week, you could see going forward where if schools aren't making a commitment in a sport, it's prorated where they get less revenue. And say, how can you say that? Well, if it's just years, I mean, you look at SEC basketball. That's basically what Mike Slive said in 2014. But when we're getting this SEC network, you got to do better because we can't serve bad beef at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. We got to get the best. I mean, that's what.
Well, and I never understood it. I always just felt like it's a marketing thing. I was like, I don't know how you don't market yourself in Nashville. Like, I just don't know how you don't make that interesting. I just, there's got to be a way. I mean, have a great halftime show, something. Like there's got to be something that you can do. I mean, I'm a marketing person, right? I just think that would be an easy draw. I mean, give the damn tickets away at this point.
Get Dancing Bears out there.
It's not on their list. Things that are important at every other school are not important to Vanderbilt. Athletics is just one thing of another thing. It's a
don't
thing.
Think people even know so much.
They've got so much money. And they are so image conscious. They don't care about the winning. They care, does it look like we want it to look, and does it appeal to the Ivy League crowd that we cocktail party with?
Well, they should look at like a school like Boulder, because they used to feel that way before Dion was there, and then they realized they were losing so much money with that empty stadium back there with no one was going to for years.
Chris, look, I know you've got to get and do another. I think you record on Tuesdays, so love having you on here on Tuesdays. Awesome. And let people know how they can keep up with you, because you do great work and it needs to be watched. And we want you being part of this Sidelines SEC Sports Network.
Yeah, I run the Vanderbilt Rivals site, have for 21 years. Got tired of covering that all the time. Launched Southeastern 14.
Yeah, that's a rough time.
So I still do them both. I spend more of my time at Southeastern 14. We cover men's basketball, baseball, and football wall to wall. We're about to go record some previews for Wednesday night's games. We'll react to tonight's games on tomorrow's show. We had power rankings yesterday. We do an SEC basketball fantasy draft that's interesting. We do a mailbag on Fridays. And we're doing football. I'm going to talk to Matt Moscona here in about an hour about SEC football. So go search YouTube, Southeastern 14. You'll find all our stuff there.
Look, we love it, man.
The horn, man. The old school.
I love it. And I'm getting a lot of people, but having you on here, learn a hell of a lot. But never is football out of season. So look forward to having you on next week with more great news.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, Brenden. Appreciate you guys having me.
Have a good day.
You bet.
He's awesome. He
really is. And so is this one, Yancy Porter from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Rebel Yell Hotline, man. Catch them Monday night, 6 p.m. Central, Sports 56, WHBQ in Memphis, and Super Talk, Mississippi, Monday nights at 6, all over the great state of Mississippi and all over the Mid-South. And Yancy, last year, 3 weeks before it was even talked about or rumored, you said, don't be surprised if Ole Miss doesn't hire Chris Beard. He is already doing what you thought, and I thought he would, building a power there. And the home atmosphere, that was their first loss to Auburn Saturday night. But the students, everybody now, that's the thing to do, is go to an Ole Miss basketball game like it is with football and baseball. Are these the best times you can ever remember across the board in Ole Miss athletics?
Great question. I'll tell you. I'll give you that answer after baseball season.
Yeah, it's got to do their
They
part.
just lost. They just had their second pitcher. Their top two pitchers for this season are now out with Tommy John and Revis. That was expected to be the Friday or Saturday starter. Just went out Friday. So last 2 years they've lost their top two pitchers just weeks before the season started. It's a blow, and as you know, at Ole Miss, baseball really means a lot more than probably 99.9% of the schools. So, the Ole Miss community's just trying to get over that blow right now. But they did bring in a deep recruiting class on the mound, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, last year, after winning the national championship, they didn't get to the tournament, and neither did Mississippi State after winning it, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How deep is the SEC in baseball? When we're going to get back to basketball and football in a minute, but we love all these sports. But how deep is the league in baseball? And they're going to a new format in 2025.
Yeah, with the SEC tournament, single elimination. I don't know how I feel about that. Change is hard. Some of us it takes longer than others for change, but
Yeah.
it could. I think with that proposal that passed there, I think the worry was that teams that win the SEC tournament or go deep or worn out by the time the NCAA started. And down the road, does anybody remember the SEC tournament? Right, it's supposed to be to get you prepared for the NCAA tournament, and the ones that are, really going deep in that tournament in recent years just are not having any success in the NCAA tournament, the one that really matters. So, let's give it a whirl. Let's see if this can help rectify that problem. As far as basketball, yes, I mean, look, you saw last week the atmosphere in that stadium, the arena there at Ole Miss. You could match it anywhere in the country. So they're hungry for basketball. It's been 3 or 4 years since they've been relevant in basketball, and you get off to an 18-3 start, and winning scratches all itch. So.
Yeah.
There's no doubt, but anywhere in the country, you get a fan base that starts believing that it's going to generate a ton of excitement.
Yeah, I like Bruce Pearl's comment. Chris Beard got done in 6 months at Ole Miss what it took me 3 years to get done at Auburn. That's a hell of a statement, and certainly a sign of respect that he has for Chris Beard. And I just think Chris Beard, he's one of those coaches. I love coaches like that. They're just driven, and they're obsessive, compulsive winners.
Yeah, and it just is. It's a lesson for fan bases out there, right? Where was Pearl's program after 3 years, right? And in today's climate, even what year is this for Beard? 10th.
Pearl, this
Excuse
is
me, for
10th for
Pearl.
Bruce
10th,
Pearl.
yeah.
Yeah.
And things have changed in the last 10 years, and the fan bases that want to get rid of coaches after year 1 or 2. Certainly 3, right? If you haven't won big in year 3, that they want you out the door, no matter the sport. I mean, it's a good lesson, right? I mean, sometimes you got to have patience, and as the Bible says, patience is a virtue.
Oh, it
And
is.
fans don't
No
have it around
question.
the country.
Yeah. I mean, going back in the football example, Frank Beamer, Virginia Tech. I mean, his first 5 or 6 years were woeful.
And
then
nobody can lose for 5 or 6 years now. Nobody
no,
can.
then
He
they're
would
not
have
going to
never
let you
been
do
given
it.
that chance in
Yeah,
the social media era. Right.
Yeah, what Mike Krzyzewski at Duke, Dean Smith, John Thompson. You look around, and the patience that fans don't have anymore is costly. But a guy like Chris Beard, he understands that.
Well,
Man,
Chris Beard does not help that, right? He comes in year one everywhere he
yeah,
goes, and he wins big. And fans say, "Well, look at Beard did it." Look
yep.
at Saban by year two; they're competing for national championships. So you have very selective examples of coaches that can come in and win big from the jumping out of the gate, and everybody clings to those coaches. Well, that's just not normal, though.
It is not. I mean, it happens. You name the sport. A coach comes in his first year. That doesn't always mean the success is going to follow. Gus Malzahn is Exhibit A. First year plays for the national championship. The next year goes 8-5,
Yeah,
and
you can't.
one
Yeah.
excuse after another. But Chris Beard and Bruce Pearl, their personalities make you believe, okay, it's going to get better. I believe it. I can conceive it. I can believe it. I can achieve it. Have you had a chance to sit down and talk with Chris Beard about his philosophy on everything from getting the fans engaged to recruiting and NIL?
Well, I've spoken to Beard on several occasions, but I
Yeah.
really haven't gotten down to the nitty gritty about the fundamentals of
Yeah.
how he builds a program and the way that he tries to achieve it. We've talked a little bit here and there about different things within the program, but no, not that kind of heart to heart, really breaking down the program. But look, one day I will. Hopefully, I have that chance. I mean, there's going to be. There's rumors that Louisville's going to be coming after him if the Arkansas coach takes that job, and if Arkansas job comes open, it's always going to be rumor gate. But I do think he'll be here for a few years. I think that the any questions from Beard about the support he's going to get from the Ole Miss fan base have been answered now. Like I said, just the last 3 or 4 games at home in the SEC, the atmosphere has been
Yeah.
unmatched. It's just incredible.
Well, I go to Oxford a lot and have so many Ole Miss friends, and they have a lot of money. And I say this all the time because I get so damn tired of people taking cheap shots at Mississippi and Arkansas and some of these smaller states. Tremendous. If you have not been to Oxford, go to Oxford. Just go to the square. Go to Proud Larry's, candy shop, City Grocery, Downtown Grill. Go to the Beacon for breakfast. I don't give a damn. And you go to a baseball game down there. They sell more than 10,000 season tickets in baseball. There's 3,500 people on a waiting list, people.
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin is perfect. This guy is always going to have Ole Miss in my opinion, in that 9-10 plus win. That's going to be the new minimum is going to be 9. But
Yeah,
man,
I think 9 would be a monster huge disappointment for next season.
yeah,
Maybe one of the biggest disappointments in school history. It's if you don't make the playoffs next year, it is a total colossal failure.
yeah.
How
Well,
I wanted to
they've
ask a
got money
question
and they
on
got
the.
players. Yeah,
Yeah,
Do what now?
I just was going to ask you, Yancy, and along the same lines of with Lane Kiffin, as much as there's a lot of buildup, right, about how great the off season's going, and last
Yeah.
season,
Hmm.
do you hold your breath a little bit and think, God, I hope the old, Lane doesn't wake up, or you know what I mean? Like, because I know that feeling, and it's like, it's like you
Well,
love him until you hate him, right? And like, you don't want him like the young Lane Kiffin to maybe show up one day or do something that he done in the past. Is that even a part of the conversation?
no, not really. Because you know what kind of coach he is, and in the past, it's like, man, if the quarterback gets hurt, it can run everything, or this certain offensive tackle get hurt, the left tackle, it just like last year, right? We saw that the week of the Georgia game, they lose two of their offensive line starters. You had 5 guys that played all year. The week of leading up to the Georgia game, they lose both their offensive tackles in practice, and then they lose their center in the very first series, and it just they just absolutely fell apart in that Georgia game and got embarrassed. But you don't really have that now because you brought in 4 unbelievable proven offensive linemen around the country. You bring back 4 of your starters. The defensive line added so many key people. Just everywhere down the, there's not really the depth. The depth is not an issue for this year, and they're so solid and deep on the line of scrimmage, which we all know that's where the Georgias and Alabamas always win in the end. And so no, because you got the coach. The coaching's going to be there. He's accumulated the best staff that arguably that he's had during the Kiffin era. The depth is now can get into that Georgia, Alabama because of the portal. Now, if the portal was not there, would Ole Miss have accumulated this roster? No, they would not. But it is there, and they're taking full advantage of it. And it all goes back to the collective. Walker Jones came over from Under Armour. He was the marketing director there for 12, 15 years, and they just kind of led the country in doing unique things to really get one of the best collectives in the country, and that's what it's all about. That's giving Lane the bullets to go out there and get these players in, and everybody has complete confidence that Lane is going to be one of the best X and O coaches in the country.
Yeah, and look, this is what I love about you, your knowledge of not just Ole Miss, but about the other schools around you in the league, and your genuine honesty. I mean, and I don't know, but the portal is there, and Lane Kiffin is the portalologist. I mean, he's done it like nobody else has. Some coaches don't like it. Dabo Sweeney, not a fan, and it's pushed his program backwards in the wrong direction. Hey, Yancy. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, as you call him, one of the OGs, the original guys. And he's on here with us right now. Let's bring Rodney on in here from Tider Insider. And folks, Yancy Porter and Rodney Orr both work harder than a dozen rented mules and Mennonite farmers after a storm. But you need to follow these guys. And both of them are going to let you know how they can do it. But I love getting them on here together, too, because they know one another. And I think people need to understand more and more what really goes on in covering these teams. And, Brenden, you know this, and I know it. We all have our schools that we love and we went through and we pull for. But we also are interested in each other, what we're doing. And if we don't have good programs and we don't have success, we have nothing to talk about. So pull for your school, but just pull for everybody else to win except when they play your school kind of deal. Rodney Orr has also written a new book called Bigger Than Bama. It is a powerful story that resonates with a lot of our audience. We have seen it, and he's just one of the good guys out here. Let's get Rodney Orr in here and talk more college football, what's going on in basketball, everything in the world. But Rodney, thanks for taking time to join Brenden Martin, Yancy Porter, and me on Sidelines.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it, guys. It's a beautiful day here in Tuscaloosa. I don't know about where you guys are, but we had a lot of rain the last several days, so to see that sun is really nice.
We got it too. We're lucky because it rained so much over the weekend. Flooded.
I just live in Florida, so it's always
you don't count.
I wore a sweater because it's a balmy 70 this morning, so
yeah,
freezing.
Man,
yeah. Well, I tell you what, up this way, and as Rob can attest, when you've been snowed in for 10 days and iced in and everything else, this is definitely a welcome sight to see the sun out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say really fast, I didn't say Yancy to you. I want to know what the reaction is to Lane Kiffin coming out and saying that he's a Swiftie. He loves Taylor Swift and he doesn't care who knows it. Can we talk? I mean, really?
Yeah. I don't know this whole Taylor Swift thing with Kansas City and people getting mad. I don't get it. Now I'm understanding it's political and Swift is supposed to be. And, Kelsey are supposed to get a fraction of the population to vote for Biden. And maybe that's the root cause of all this. I don't know. I don't get the whole thing. I really don't.
I don't either. It's nuts. I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl. I'll be in Charlotte Sunday at my son's going up there to visit this weekend. But Rodney, I got to ask you, man. Tomorrow is National Signing Day. We just now getting to it 50 minutes into the show. It's just the world we live in. What surprises, if any, do you expect to see for Alabama? I know they're going to get Ryan Williams, but anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Quentin Reese, who's a former son of a former Auburn player.
Yeah.
Well, he goes by QB Reese. Actually, his dad was Quentin, or went by Quentin. It was a great player there at Auburn, and he's a real playmaker. I mean, he's a little undersized, about 6 feet, 205 as a linebacker, but he's a real playmaker. He was a Class 5A Player of the Year, Defensive Lineman of the Year. They termed him. He's a really talented kid. Very smart kid. But QB Reese is going to sign. Obviously, you mentioned Ryan Williams, 10 a.m. tomorrow morning at Saraland is going to sign. And then a guy that I really like that I think, even though he's a 4-star rated player, he really moved up in the rankings. I think he's extraordinarily gifted pass rusher. He was originally committed to Washington, signed with them in December. Then DeBoer left and came here, and now he's following DeBoer here. That's Noah Carter, about 6'4", 220. Got a great pass rusher. If you watch his tape, you'll see he's a talented receiver as well. So really gifted kid. And, right now, I mean, again, if it goes as planned, that's what we expect.
Well, I got to ask you this, and I know Yancy and Brenden have questions, but Alabama's class, Georgia, I think, was 1, Alabama 2, Texas 3. And then you had all these guys leave, which I think that's a horrible rule. I don't care who the school is.
Horrible rule.
It's gonna happen to you. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. Be careful about pushing and being glad when a player gets hurt. You're sick if you're like that anyway. But in recruiting, when you take all that into account, where will Alabama's class finish up? I mean, Ryan Williams is arguably, Jason Caldwell said, in 2025 was likely going to be the number 1 player in the country. And right now he's the 3rd best receiver, I think 8th overall after reclassifying as a senior out of Saraland, superpower just north of Mobile down in L.A., Lower Alabama.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Alabama.
he's one of the more, I guess you could say, publicized, touted players to come out of the state of Alabama in, several years, obviously. I mean, he generated a lot of buzz already. I think he's the only player in state history to be named, back-to-back Mr. Football. And guess what? He would have probably done it for a 3rd time, trifecta, had he not reclassified. So, he's a really gifted kid. I mean, he's a great receiver. I think he's a great fit in what they're going to do in Kalen DeBoer's offense. Obviously, it was a major pickup when he recommitted. I think one thing about DeBoer, as you look at him, there was some talk about, he's not from this part of the country or whatever, and he might struggle with recruiting or, getting players. We'll see. But all I know, in his first 16 days, he recommitted Ryan Williams after Ryan had decommitted when Saban announced his retirement. He landed Noah Carter, who, like I said, I think he's an incredibly gifted pass rusher. And he landed 3 outstanding transfers. And to be honest with you, I think he held this roster together pretty well, given that, several guys could have left and they stayed. I think Caleb Downs is the one that really stands out as a guy that you'd want to keep. But you know what? I think other than Caleb Downs, really, I mean, you lost Caden Proctor. I'm not sure Caden Proctor's really a fit for this offense unless he lost 30, 40 pounds, and I don't know if Caden was willing to do that. And then I think, Isaiah Bond, I mean, again, no offense to Isaiah Bond. He's a really good player. Is he replaceable? Yeah, I think he is. But Amari Nyblack going to Texas, that was a bit more of a loss to me than Isaiah Bond. But other than that, I mean, I just think that he's done a really good job of holding the roster together.
Yeah. I think anyone that tries to compare him to Hagar the Horrible, I mean, Brian Harsin is wrong. Rodney, I mean, Yancy.
Well, I mean, you look at what he did at Washington, and quickly, right? He had him in the national championship game. It was no fluke, and he does an outstanding job in the portal now. Now, some Bama people might be saying that, well, we don't want to be the next Ole Miss and go, portal heavy so much. But Alabama, he's not going to have to use the portal as much in year 4, year 5. You get down the road, it'll be a 4, 5, 6, 7 type portal class for them because Alabama can recruit at a national level. Anybody you can throw as the head coach there, and they're going to be able to attract the 4 and 5 stars. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of modifies his system there. But even at a school like Washington, not a true blue blood there, he's got them there in the national championship in 2 or 3 years. So I mean, I would not worry about his recruiting. That would be the least of my worries.
Yeah, and Rodney, Nick Saban, we haven't heard anything out of him really. Is he just? I don't know. Is he in town? Is he in Florida? Because I mean, he says he's going to have an office there in Tuscaloosa. I don't know if it's in the building. It's in the stadium. Okay,
right.
So I mean, maybe he's going to be a greeter. Is that what he's looking at doing?
I doubt that.
I'll tell you one thing: those Lions Club guys down there at Jordan Hare Stadium, they will not flinch. You ain't getting through there. It's like, let me see Rodney. There was a story when Coach Bryant died about this old curmudgeon that used to be in charge of the elevator passes to get up to the top at Liberty Bowl Stadium, and Alabama was there playing a game. And Coach Bryant was trying to get in, and he didn't have his pass. And he goes, "You're not getting in." It was a true story.
I saw that happen. Yancy probably remember it was back in the mid '80s. Yancy, who was the basketball coach at Ole Miss in the mid '80s that ended up going to Missouri, Kansas City, University of Missouri at Kansas City?
Lee Hunt.
Lee Hunt. Yeah. I literally was standing right there. I was covering the Ole Miss Georgia basketball game in Oxford, and Lee Hunt had just suffered a disappointing loss. He was disgusted. He stepped out of the locker room. He goes to the bathroom or whatever, and he's coming back in, and the guy says, "Sir, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. You don't have a pass." I'm telling you what, Lee Hunt wasn't a very big guy, but man, I can't repeat what all was said, but it was
decorum prohibits.
I mean,
you probably had to watch out for the rats rolling by your feet in that old Coliseum.
Yeah.
Good gosh.
Oh, the Tad Pad. That thing was awesome.
Man.
The Tad
Pad.
I hadn't heard that
was awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Well, Rodney, I mean, so Kalen DeBoer is in now, and I don't know, have you had a chance to talk to him yet? Because I've got a lot of Alabama fans asking me, what's he like? He's from South Dakota. If you want to get his attention, growing up in South Dakota, I've hunted up there a lot. And we pheasant hunt up there in Chamberlain and Oklawana and Iroquois and these towns like that. And yell when you see him, go, "Rooster!" Because that's what you say when you see a rooster. I bet he'll just come to his knees. But ask him if he's ever been to the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota. That is where Mike Miller played his basketball. I've been in there and taken the tour. It is something you've never seen anything like it. I mean, it would be like the Brisket Palace down here in the South or something. But
what did you say the name of it is?
The Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't ask him about the Congo Club. He may not know about that, but it's a neat place, and the people up there are just amazing. Most of them are 5th, 6th, and 7th generation homesteaders. What do you mean? They look at that land. It looks like the landscape of the moon and say, "You want this? Yeah. You really want this? Yeah, you can have it." I mean, so they're really great people. I love them up there. Like Gary Rose, our friend at the L7 Ranch in Chamberlain. And, but to me, he seems like a guy that has a to-do list of about 25 things when he goes to bed every night. And what is, like, as far as recruiting and everything like that, what he did at Washington, weren't they just basically a dead program? He goes 25-3 in 2 seasons and plays for the national championship in his 2nd year.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be really interesting we've got spring practice starting in March. I think it's going to start March the 4th.
Wow.
Somewhere in that vicinity. So, we're less than a month away from
I'm so excited.
from this really starting,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Alabama fans are obviously excited. There's going to be some changes. I mean, I think offensively things are going to change some, and to his system, and it's going to be interesting to see how Kane Womack and that defense, how he kind of changes things. It's going to be different than Nick Saban's system. So there's a lot of changes going on here, but I think that I think Alabama fans certainly have to understand that you bring in a different coach, and things are going to be different. He has to do things his way. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and I think that Nick Saban really realized that there were changes he needed to make. But at 72 years old, getting a new staff, changing some things, I think it would have just wasn't, that was passed him by. And I think that, he did what he said he was going to do. Saban did. And he said, I'm not going to sit around if I feel like that things have slipped a little bit. And when we say slipped and people start laughing, hey, they just played. They almost beat Michigan, the team that won the national championship. It's not really what I'm saying, though. There's a bigger picture than what you see. I mean, you've got to be able to see the whole program. And, I think some things were kind of starting to reveal themselves. Again, he had a great recruiting year, but there were some things that, I feel like that Nick Saban felt like, hey, it's time to step down. And, DeBoer's got to be able to do things his way. So I'm interested to see, Rob, when spring practice starts, the competition at quarterback, the competition at all these different positions. And some people say, well, you got Jalen Milroe coming back and he's a leading Heisman candidate. Well, I mean, again, Milroe had a lot of ups and downs. We know he's an extraordinarily gifted player. There's no question about his athleticism. But I think he's probably got to make some big jumps. And you know what? I'm not putting that past Milroe to do that. But as a passer in this offense, I think there's some things that he's got to definitely improve upon.
I do too.
I wanted to ask real quick, Rodney, real quick. Rodney, I feel like the Nick Saban having the office, in the stadium or wherever it's going to be is very a la what, ambassador, like what Steve Spurrier's done at Florida. Do you feel like that's the capacity he's going to probably work in? And I think, and then secondly, I think everyone thinks that these coaches are just so ready to be like, oh, I'm so helpful and here we go. And this is what I do. But that's really not the nature of the beast with a lot of these guys. I think that they're there I think, they're more hands off, like, hey, it's your deal. I don't want to, overshadow what you're doing. I'm here if you need me. And coaches don't really like to just, hey, come on. That's not a very popular thing. At least that's what I've seen, here in Florida.
Yeah, right. And I can't remember Spurrier's setup there. He might have been in the same building over there, but now, given that Saban, I think, intentionally wanted an office. Hey, by the way, his office in the stadium is a complete replica of the stadium he had inside the football complex, which is, 3 or 4 blocks away. So they're not going to be in the same building, but, typical Saban fashion, he didn't want anything changed. He eats some Little Debbie cookies every morning. And I actually heard somebody one time brought him, you got the small Little Debbie cookies, and he eats 2 of those every morning. Okay, somebody accidentally, he needed some of those Debbie cookies, and they brought him the big ones. Yeah. Boy, that person learned a very good lesson that day. He wants the small ones. So that's kind of the way he is. That's his personality, So he's got the replica office there in the stadium. It looks just like his other one. And I think really to answer your question is, I think, just from a transition standpoint, anything where he can be helpful, he will do that. I think there's some things with the transfer portal that he may, be involved with, NIL, those types of things. And, we'll see, what the future is after maybe a year. But I think for the next year, he's going to certainly help anything he can do transitional wise.
We're talking with Rodney Orr, Tatter Insider. It's only $48 a year on the May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport. Tatter Insider report since 1964, providing the best veterinary medicine, health care for dogs and cats. 2 locations, again, open every day of the week. Sundays, the Camp May, where the dogs and cats can stay while you're on vacation. They have an outdoor pool. They even have connecting cat condos for that old hag down the street that has 20 cats. They can all stay together, okay? So it's a beautiful place, and drop off and pick up only on Sundays from 3 to 5 p.m. We're really proud and honored to have May Veterinary Clinic as a sponsor, some of the best people around, and Waller and Susan and Guy, all the Mays. Mayday, Mayday. Yancy, you just heard what Rodney was saying about having a coach there. I don't know Nick Saban, but he strikes me as somebody who is OCD, which is what most highly successful people are.
Yeah.
I like Rodney's take on that, and I like what Brenden said as well. And what do you think?
I don't think Saban needs to be there. I think he needs to be there for a couple weeks for the transition and help out and be there for the alumni, but hanging out at the stadium and just a presence of that big. I mean, look, you're talking about arguably the greatest head coach of all time. That is someone that is very controlling, that just has that presence. I think the new coach needs to come in with a clean slate without somebody hanging over his head. I don't think it's good for him to be there. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And Rodney, hearing Yancy say that, we don't know what Coach Bryant would have been like because he died, as he often would say, Rodney. He goes, I don't know if I ever want to retire. I'll probably croak in 30 days. And he did not live long. Looking back, what do you think it would have been like? Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it would have been like? And we all have our opinions and all, but who are you going to find that you'd want to talk to someone like that? But what do you think?
Well, Coach Bryant was the AD, so
Yeah.
I think he was going to stick around for a while, and try to help Perkins through that transitional period. But that's 40 years ago. Again, I think a lot of things depend personally, individually, how you are, and I really don't know. I'll be honest with you, man. You guys might be surprised about this. Everybody loves Nick Saban. Over here, okay? You
Yeah.
understand that. You understand that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm gonna be honest with you. There's nobody talking about Nick Saban right now. It's all
He
Kalen
likes
DeBoer.
it.
It's all Kalen DeBoer. It's all Kalen DeBoer. Who's he hiring? The staff he's put together, the recruiting that they're doing. They just had a big junior day, and there's a lot of excitement. I think he's entered. Look, Coach Saban's the greatest, just like you said. This is not taking anything, but there comes a time for a guy to move on, and I think there's about a 95%. If I'm just going based on my website, people I'm talking to, there's about 5% that are still hanging on to Coach Saban. Okay, and a lot of those people are saying, why didn't they hire Lane Kiffin? Why didn't they hire Sark? They should have honored Coach Saban and kind of kept his system going or whatever, hired one of his guys or whatever. You always have that crowd. But I'm just being honest with you. I think that now I'll tell you this because I experienced it 40-something years ago. When Coach Bryant stepped down, Ray Perkins was not, even though he was a Bryant guy, and that's what I try to tell these people who say, well, we should have hired a Saban guy. I try to tell them, I said, look, I was here 40-something years ago when Ray Perkins came in. He played on 2 national championship teams, should have been 3, 1966, that they didn't win. They should have won. But anyway, I say all that to say he was not well received by a good portion of the fan base. So what's my point? My point is it's an individual thing. Ray Perkins had a different personality than Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer's come in. He's he's a totally different personality than Nick Saban. So again, right now, I think that's the way it is. Obviously it's a honeymoon period or whatever, but it's going to be real interesting.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to kind of see, how he operates.
And in the honeymoon phase, it's okay, right? But what happens, when Alabama wins 14-10 against Vanderbilt hypothetically next year?
Oh, yeah,
And
you're right.
whoa, what's going? And you got Nick over there in the football stadium, and it just I just think it could cause a lot of problems for the program going forward in the future when things get testy and hairy. Right now, it's fine, but
Yeah.
I don't think Nick wants to hinder. I don't think Nick has any intentions on smothering this program.
Not at
I
all.
really don't. But his presence is so big that when things get hairy, on that football field, and they will. I mean, it doesn't mean they can still go
Yeah.
13-0 and it gets hairy, right? Alabama is going to get mad even when they win close games. So it's just, I just think Alabama made that break. They hired a coach, had nothing to do with Saban. Like you said, it wasn't a Kiffin, it wasn't a Sark, it wasn't anybody who
Yeah.
played for Nick, it wasn't any. So let it be a clean break, right? Let the guy spread his wings and be his own man.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Buddy Martin, good morning and welcome aboard. We're talking with Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. And interesting topic is about, Nick Saban and Rodney said he's going to have an office like his office was in the football complex in Bryant-Denny Stadium. And that's something we didn't see with Coach Bryant because he didn't live but I think 28 days after he retired. But you want to chime in on this one? I just glad to see you pop in the BB studio.
Good morning to you. First of all, congratulations on the show, guys. Enjoyed listening to it. Well, listening to you, Rob. Congratulations. I'm just here for a cameo, as they say. I got business to do outside, but I was going to tell you my name was Brenden, and I didn't get away with that. So I do want to go back to one thing, if I just might, in the 2 or 3 minutes you allow me to be here today. And that is the old story about who can get in, who was Coach Bryant not getting back in, the basketball coach not getting back in. I went to about 22 Masters over my lifetime covering Masters. There was always this behemoth, this guy, huge guard. His name was Tiny. He weighed about 325 pounds in the media center. And he was quite the story. And Cliff Roberts, you guys might have heard the name, is way before your time. He was the czar of Augusta. He ran everything, every leaf, everything had to go through Cliff Roberts. And so Tiny was adamant in his job. He was a Georgia Tech football player. He came over there to be a guard. They told him, don't you let anybody in this without a pass. So lo and behold, here comes Cliff Roberts going down to the media center, okay? Back in the days of the Quonset hut. Walks up to go in, and Tiny says, hold on, sir. He said, excuse me? He said, hold on. He said, what do you mean, hold on? He said, you can't come in here. He said, I'm Cliff Roberts. He said, I don't care who you are. You're not coming in this press center without a pass. Cliff Roberts turned around, went back up to the Augusta clubhouse, came back, walked up to Tiny and said, can I get in now? Opened up, had 6 passes, different passes. But that's okay, son. You're doing your job.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's right.
I mean, look, you want people like that. He's doing his job, and you think, but that really happened at the Liberty Bowl. That was a legendary story. Coach Bryant couldn't get in. That old guy goes, "Sure, you don't have a pass, and well, you're not getting in." He goes, "Well, I've got to get up there." And they didn't let him in. Finally, they got him in. But that's somebody that's diligent in their job. That's a cool story. I like that.
I'm loving Rodney talking about his book and hearing the Yancy. And boy, I was talking to my friend Shane Matthews. We did the show together this morning. And he was talking about the Ole Miss and about the money. He says, you have no idea how much money Ole Miss has. Now, he's from there. His daddy went to school. His mom was a cheerleader. And he says, they got so much money.
Yeah.
They can, they're one of the richest schools around. And in this NIL world today, that means a lot.
Yeah.
And so, so Ole Miss has got a whole bunch again. Now they got a football team with the players they got coming now with NIL. Boy, he's going to be king of the world. That football team in Ole Miss this year is going to be really good.
Yeah. And then, Rodney, we were talking about, and Rodney with Buddy Martin here, GatorbaitMedia.com, one of the best sports writers in American history. And Rodney, you've talked a lot about Kalen DeBoer, about he's everywhere, and you're right. It hit me. You hadn't heard a word out of Nick Saban. He's just kind of like, look, man, this is his gig. But what does the world not know about Kalen DeBoer that they're going to find out soon?
I think the thing about him is, and again, let's be clear. I started studying Kalen DeBoer back in October when I was tipped off that this Saban thing's real. He might be stepping down, and you better keep your eye on Kalen
Yeah.
DeBoer. That was when I was first tipped off. So I started studying
Wow.
him
I
more.
didn't see that one coming at all. You had good information.
Yeah. I mean, I started studying because you never know how these things go.
Mhm.
And so I started studying Kalen DeBoer quite a bit. And, actually on my website on TighterInsider.com, my membership they erupted it was right before the Michigan game. It was probably a week or so before the Michigan game because WJOX up here in Birmingham was, continuing to discuss the possibility of Nick Saban stepping down. And they were like, why do they keep bringing this up? And I said, maybe because Kalen DeBoer hasn't signed that contract yet.
Hmm.
I was just throwing them a little hint. So anyway, I started studying him, and I think the one thing, Rob, is people don't get is, and I go back to what I said earlier. People do things, they can be effective, they can be very successful, and not do it the same way the other guy did it. And I think that Kalen DeBoer's personality is a lot different than Saban. He's a guy that's already texting with media. You think Nick Saban? I don't even know if Nick Saban texted, much less texted with media. Not
Wow.
not
That's
local,
amazing.
not local media. He certainly didn't. And look, I'm not knocking Coach Saban. I mean, you know what? He did it his way, and I respect that. So I'm not knocking him for what they did, but I just think that he's a more approachable personality than Coach Saban. And again,
Bravo.
yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah. He's a really. But here's the thing: people sometimes look at that and say, "Oh, that's a weakness." They're going to run over him or whatever. No, I think this guy's. I don't think it's a weakness. I think what it is he's really confident. I think he's really confident because listen, and look, this should tell you all you need to know. He's following Nick Saban. He didn't have to come down here. He could have stayed at Washington. Guess what? Michigan would have probably offered him a big deal, or somebody else would have offered him a great opportunity. So, but no, he did not back down from the challenge of following Nick Saban. And a lot of people, I know I talked to a lot of people around the country, and we talked about when I started thinking, hey, this Saban thing could really happen. I talked to some people around the country and they go, Alabama's not going to get a proven guy. Because I called one of my top sources in Texas who's got contacts around the country. And I said, listen, what do you know about Kalen DeBoer? And he started telling me all this stuff about Kalen DeBoer. And he goes, well, why are you asking? And I told him, and he's like, Kalen DeBoer's he's not going to follow Nick Saban. Why would he follow Nick Saban? So anyway, to get to back to the point is he's a confident guy. Again, he's going to do things different than Nick Saban, but he's confident in what he does. He's confident in himself, his staff, and the way he runs an organization. You saw what he did at Washington. He's very successful. He's been successful everywhere he's been. Again, this is going to be, people say he's got more talent, Rob, than he's ever worked with. I also say this, he's going to be playing against a lot more talented teams. So anyway, I just think he's a really intense guy.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And just, look, it's Alabama. Once you win like this, people say the fans are, well, when you win like that, any fan base, Celtics fans, Cowboys fans, they're still waiting for that next one. It's impossible to go back to where you were. Once your mind, that's what happens when you're educated. Once your mind goes from its original size and expands out to here, it never reverts back. I mean, we're always learning. All right, look, about out of time, and Rodney Orr, Tyler Insider, folks, tonight, 6:30 p.m., he and Gary Harris, another one of our team members here on the sidelines, SEC Sports Network, they do a great show, 6:30s. You never know what they're going to talk about, Rodney always says, till he gets there, but it's a great show. Rodney, let them know how they can order the book and keep up with you. And let me say that most often we see the face of Christ unleashed among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Don't let other people, as Gandhi said, walk through your mind with their dirty feet. Focus on the positives and find excuses to win, and follow people like Rodney Orr, Buddy Martin, Yancy Porter, Chris Lee, all part of Sidelines. But tag us out here, Rodney.
Yeah, TigerInsider.com. It's only $48 a year, and you can get instant access. If you're an Alabama fan, get instant access with your credit card. If you prefer, there is an address there to send a check, and that gives you all our premium information, but also our all sports forum. That's our community of Alabama fans. Have a great, incredible community there. And then also, you mentioned the book, Bigger Than Bama. It's available. We would prefer that you order it off of rodneyorr.com. That's RODNEYORR.com. Or if you prefer, you could go to Amazon.com. It's available there. But, those two options for my book, Bigger Than Bama. It's about more than just Alabama football. It's got a lot of inside stories on recruiting, coaches that I've covered, and all of these things, the hiring process of Nick Saban. But it's also about life. It's about things that happened in my life that, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Rob, and, with the addictions in my family and the loss of my wife. So it's all of those things in Bigger Than Bama.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of our show. And look, the link in the chat room, if you hit it, you can tell people to go to the chat room and subscribe to our YouTube channel and get involved in the chat room like Rodney talks about, the forum that he has. And, buddy, love having you on here, the wise man. Looking forward to having you on more and more. And football never stops. Somebody is starting spring practice probably in the next 5 or 10 days.
Yeah.
So our support group won't have to suffer too long, will they?
Oh, right. And Rob, thank you. I'm left here to push the button when the time comes because he had to go outside. But here's the deal. Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
About what's going on now with the whole issue of NIL, how to deal with it. There have been some successes, Ole Miss, what have you. Alabama didn't matter. They got all the money in the world. Florida's struggle with this whole thing and the Jaden Rashada deal where they screwed that up, whatever. And the whole money issue has become a big story, maybe the biggest story around. We don't want it to be because guys like us are purists, Rob. We love the game. But it's like Shane Matthews said on the show, it's boiled down to the fact if you want to get players, you either got to win all the time or you got to offer them more money. And that's the sad reality of what we got here. So now you take a case like Florida with 500,000 alumni out there. They're trying to raise money. And, of course, every day the price goes up. You hear $1 million quarterbacks, $100,000 to $5,000 business. How do you deal with this? Yeah. Here's what I want to tell you. Tonight on my show, if I may just plug it for a second, at 9 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to reveal the guy who is going to be one of the key guys in the future of Florida's major fundraising program called Florida Victorious. Somebody I know well. This guy's a stud. He's going to be stepping in. Now, I saw his plan yesterday. I can't tell you who it is. The massive plan he's got to publicize this whole thing is masterful. It will be a huge story for Florida because more than a special teams coach and more than an offensive coordinator, they need somebody to raise money because schools like Ole Miss can drive them in the ground.
Yeah, well, everybody out there is in the fundraising business, and if you're not, I don't like NIL the way it's set up, but if you don't embrace it, you're going to fall behind, and someone else is going to pass you up, and they're not going to let you back up in the front of the line. But great show today. We'll be back on tomorrow. Got a Dudley Dawson, Vince Ferrara, Jordan Hill. Be talking a lot of SEC tomorrow, which is what we do every day. And watch that Buddy Martin show tonight. I will be watching that. I'm interested to see because what happens down there, Rodney knows this, I know this, what happens at Florida and Alabama, these big flagship universities like that, it has reverberations and affects everybody in the country. See you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. We are out of here.